All right, welcome everyone to our webinar here, 3 Ways Wireless Lighting Control Helps Contractors. Thank you for being here with us today. Appreciate the time. Quick overview of what we're going to cover during this webinar is first a brief overview of why lighting control in general, and then jump into those 3 ways that we talked about, how wireless can help contractors. And then get into some applications and customer response with our Vive wireless lighting control, and then we'll open it up for questions. My name is Rick Walsh. Thanks a lot for joining me here today. I'm the product manager for our Vive wireless solution, and you can see my contact information there if you have any further questions or follow-up. Also, in terms of questions throughout, feel free to type it into the questions box as we go, and then I will jump to getting them as we go. All right, so when we talk about lighting control, we look at more than just energy savings in terms of what it means to a building. Many people think that lighting control means saving energy, but it also means more than that in terms of both the operations and rent of the building as well as the salary. So if you look at the costs in a building, energy accounts for about $3 a square foot versus operations and rent at $30 a square foot and salaries at over $300 a square foot. Now this varies region to region, and it's not an exact number, but the order of magnitude between the difference is really what matters. And lighting control actually helps address performance in the buildings for all 3 of these categories. So for energy, it helps you save energy in a variety of ways, anywhere from simply turning lights or plug loads or other things on and off to integrating with an HVAC system. It can also improve your operations and rent by using that data you get from your occupancy sensors and systems to better utilize how your space is laid out so that you don't have to rent more floors or build new buildings. And can even help the people in the space be more productive, both by providing the ability to adjust the light to the way they want it, as well as give them access to things like daylighting to improve their overall comfort and productivity. The other reason why lighting control is that energy codes are requiring controls more and more around the country. So we look at codes like ASHRAE, IECC, or Title 24 in California, and those are all requiring different levels of controls. And over the last few releases, increasing levels of integrated and complete lighting control systems are being required by these energy codes just to meet the building standards. So this is something that's going to continue to be a trend over time in order to bring those energy codes into those buildings. So Lutron, why do we then make lighting control overall based on those market conditions? And really, it's to bring out the best in the building. We believe in making every commercial building not only efficient, but comfortable and productive for the people in it to work and learn. Whether it's an office space, a school, or a university, or other types of applications, that's our overarching goal. But in order to do that for every building, and not just the high-end buildings or the fancy buildings, we need to make our products easy to design, simple to install, and intuitive to monitor and adapt as the needs of the space change over time. So Vive is a simple, flexible, and scalable lighting control solution for every commercial building, both new and existing. And we'll go through how that applies to contractors and improves the ability for them to bring lighting control to those buildings. So now that we kind of understand the overarching vision, what are the challenges for an electrical contractor when it comes to lighting control? So there's a few that we're all pretty well aware of. One is there is an increasing demand for the skilled labor pool that exists in an electrical contractor, the people that can go and get things done in a high-quality manner. And we'll jump into more of that as we move forward. Also, timelines are being compressed, meaning you have to get more done faster. Jobs that used to be 2 years are now 6 months or less in terms of completing a lot of the projects from beginning to end. Not only that, but there are more changes and uncertainty. So because we're moving faster, sometimes the designs aren't as documented. There's more change and adjustment. So we need to be more flexible in terms of how they approach projects, which can create uncertainty throughout that process. And then finally, similar to what we mentioned before, there's increased requirements not only from energy codes, but customers expect their buildings to do more and improve their building performance more than ever before. So how can you, the electrical contractor, be more efficient when it comes to those situations and that condition out there in the marketplace? So the first way is to install projects faster. Simple concept, but it's something that can be very powerful in terms of improving the ability for electrical contractors to succeed on their projects with lighting control. And one of the ways that our Vive wireless solution helps make that possible is through simple wireless components that make it so that all those steps that take the time, a lot of them are eliminated, allowing you to go faster. And it breaks down into three main pieces: a load control, wireless sensors, and wireless remotes. The load controls being the thing that actually control the high voltage and the dimming, the sensors being detecting people, and the wireless remote being something that the people use to adjust the lights in their space to, again, get that productive, comfortable environment that they're looking for. So rather than just look at components on a board, let's put it in the context of a space. So if we look at a typical classroom, what we want to talk about is that the three components that talk wirelessly together that we just went over. Give you an idea, those are the three components, and the wireless communication between the two, wall control and the sensor talking to the load control, is what we're going to go through. So of those, the first one we want to look at is the control on the wall. The most simple part of it, in the sense that everywhere you go, you've got some kind of control on the wall. And what's different about a wireless system is instead of having things like a wall box, wire, etc., this wall control is something that can be mounted flush to any surface. So whether it's drywall with no wall box, whether it's glass, whether it is over a wall box in an existing installation that you just don't want to have to run wire to, these are very, very flexible remotes, our Pico wireless remotes, that you can put anywhere and drastically reduce the amount of installation time. They're so flexible, and you can see there on the left that the wireless remote, you can see the profile there is flush. So it makes it very easy without all the back box and all the other cutting and things you need to do to mount it. You can put it onto those any surfaces that you need to in order to make that job faster. You can even put them on these little tabletop pedestals to add points of control on a teacher's desk, in somebody's office, in a conference room, to add an additional point of control without any installation at all. And these are all available in multiple configuration options and button configurations for switching and dimming as well to meet the needs of your application. The next component is, okay, so we've given the people the ability to turn on and off and adjust the lights the way they want. But how do you detect automatically when people leave the space so we can turn the lights off, or detect automatically how much light is in that space so that we can dim the lights and save additional energy there? And that's our wireless sensors. We've got versions that mount on the ceiling for circular coverage, ones that go in a corner on a wall, even ones that go on a hallway to detect long, thin corridors and make sure that the occupancy sensing extends down that whole way. Finally, we also have daylight sensors that similarly mount to the ceiling and measure the amount of light in the space coming from the sun and natural light, and can tell the lights to dim in response to how much light's there. Again, these are all fully wireless components. In addition to the Pico wireless remote, they all are battery powered and have over a 10-year battery life. So really has a long lifetime on that wireless communication. So finally, okay, so great, Rick, you've shown me that there are these wireless battery powered devices, but something's got to actually control the line voltage and turn the lights on and off and dim them up and down. And that is our final category, the load controller. We're showing one here mounted to a junction box that does 0 to 10 volt dimming. It mounts up in the ceiling and communicates wirelessly to the other components. But we also have some other load controllers that you need depending on your load type. We've got them for switching versions, both neutral and non-neutral. We've got dimming, 0 to 10 volt, phase control, even digital ecosystem, all allowing that simple wireless communication to the sensors and the Picos while having that load controller in the form factor and load type that you need. You can see there that we've got several of the load controllers in our PAL pack form factor that goes up in the ceiling. We even have ones in the in-wall category, so if you have an existing wall switch and just want to take it out and add a wireless sensor, you simply can place it into the wall box and then add that wireless sensor without having to get up in the ceiling at all. So it allows you the flexibility depending on that application. So again, what this does is with those three components, you now have reliable wireless communication between those devices rather than having to run wires and a lot of other things between those components like you would for a traditional system. And if you look at, okay, so what does this mean in other types of room? Lutron's even made this easy to understand and figure out. So we've created a bunch of typical room layouts for all the different room types you're going to run into in a commercial building, whether it be a classroom, private office, a conference room. And we're giving them in two formats. One on the right is more of a graphical format showing you the layout, the bill of materials, and what functionality is going to occur in the space. And then the one on the left is more of your traditional one-line block diagram, but also including the sequence of operations that go into that space. And the great thing is we also took that and those energy codes we mentioned before that constantly update every couple of years, we've included them to give you the design that is code compliant. You can see there at the bottom, we've got these available on lutron.com/Vive spec typicals, or just on lutron.com/Vive, you can link to it from there. So this is a great way to understand what actually goes on in each of those room types. And if you're working on a design build project, this is a good way to understand what needs to go in each type of space. So to summarize, with those simple wireless components versus your traditional wiring and all the other stuff that has to go on, wall box, cutting a hole, routing, conduit, or cable, all that stuff that goes on, wireless installs up to 70% faster than those wireless systems, which can be a huge improvement in how much time it takes you to complete a job, and therefore how much profit you can make on that job. It also, again, we talked a lot about, it eliminates all the hassle of those extra parts and pieces, whether it's cutting a hole in the ceiling, pulling Cat5 through the wall, adding a wall box, power packs, or even having to clean up afterwards in terms of vacuuming up things like cutting ceiling tile stuff as it goes. So it saves time on all of those areas. But how does this actually help you? So let's put this in terms to help your business and how your daily flow goes. You can win more jobs with a lower labor bid because it installs faster. So you have an advantage when using a wireless system over somebody using a wired system because you can have a lower bid. But number two, you can still make more money even though the bid is lower. We'll show you an example of that in a second. But the idea is that by having that cost lower, you can both win the job and be more profitable. And not only that, you can just complete the job faster. So get off the job much quicker with a wireless system than a wired system. So it's kind of a working comparison of what I meant by lower bid but still more profit. And this could be true both of a bidding on a specification job or a proposal as part of a design build project, etc. If you did a wired bid, let's say the project would have been $125,000, and you can see the breakdown between labor and overhead and material costs there, resulting in a profit of about $20,000. If you did a wireless bid, in that same project, the material costs are about the same. We've actually seen in many cases that the Vive wireless solution is a little bit less expensive, but in this case we've assumed they're the same, and the labor is significantly less. So even if you go in with a bid or a proposal of $105,000, your profit is now $25,000 versus $20,000 while still being lower than the previous option. So this is a great way to see how both of those interact together. So again, the wireless was 16% lower in terms of the bid, but the profit was 25% higher. Very, very important concept and benefit of the wireless system. The other thing we can do is we can take those simple components and we can actually scale them up to a system level. And we went over the components there on the left side, and what you can add to that is a wireless hub. We call the Vive wireless hub that covers over 10,000 square feet wirelessly and provides simple software to both set up and monitor and control your system. So that hub combines a lot of things. It's got a time clock built in there, a web server, a processor, a Wi-Fi router, a Clear Connect radio. But the upshot is it gives you connectivity to all those standalone devices in the space and ties them together into software that works on any smart device, phone, tablet, or PC, right in your web browser, Safari or Chrome or something like that. It also includes native BACnet, meaning if you want to integrate into an HVAC system or a fire system or something else, we have BACnet built into that hub. And that allows you to directly communicate without gateways or extra pieces that you have to remember to connect, or routers that have to go through. So it allows you to directly connect to those systems and speak to them via BACnet, which is a great advantage in terms of simplicity of integration. And finally, the software itself gives you a number of functionality. So you get power reporting, the ability to do load shed or demand response, which is very important for California Title 24, as well as utility rebates around the country. Time clock schedules to both control your lights based on time of day or even change how your sensors work depending on whether you're opened or closed. And then obviously being able to control your lights directly from the software from anywhere in the world. Very, very useful feature as well. In addition to those components we talked about with the PAL pack and the load controllers controlling a group of fixtures, we've also added some additional components for people looking for that next level of integration. And that includes the integral fixture controller that has both wireless communication, dimming capability, occupancy sensing, and daylight harvesting all built into that fixture. So now you can get a fixture from the factory that has all of that stuff built into it and simply connect power to it and add those Pico wireless remotes on the wall, and you've now got your control system. So it makes it even simpler and has it built in from the factory to help reduce labor time even further. In addition, we've got our integrated receptacle control. So we've taken the relay, the wireless communication, and built it directly into a receptacle. And this is extremely powerful for things like meeting code in ASHRAE or Title 24 states where you were required to use a controlled receptacle in certain parts of the space and certain increments in terms of how close they are to uncontrolled receptacles. And they can actually talk to the same sensors that are being used for the lighting control. So all you have to do is simply put one of these smart receptacles in, no extra boxes or relays or wiring, and you now have it controlling it directly and wirelessly to the same sensors that are turning your lights on and off. It's a very, very great, simple solution on how to meet those code requirements in an easy way. And also drastically improves installation time because you have to put a receptacle in anyway, and you don't have to add those other pieces as you go. Also, if you're putting up new construction or have the opportunity to do this, you can also have it control downstream receptacles. Assuming the wiring is similar to a GFCI, it can actually control the receptacles downstream of it, again, reducing the material cost so that you don't have to have a smart receptacle every 6 feet. You can have one smart receptacle controlling a bunch of receptacles downstream. All right, so that talks about the install faster part. And next we're going to move into the method 2, which is hit your labor estimates even when the project details are not vague or clear. So I'll start off with a question here. Do you guys ever see a specification or a customer requirement that says something like this? Contractor to determine actual controls layout based on manufacturer recommendations. That's pretty vague. It's hard to figure out what to do with that. Or one that meets or writes out something like this. Contractor to ensure design meets all required energy codes, including IECC 2015. We tend to see these types of specifications a lot, which leaves a lot on the plate of the contractor. So I'm actually going to start here with a poll for people here and ask you guys a question. Do you think specifications and designs are getting more clear, about the same, or less clear up front and more likely to change? So you should all see this on your screen now. Go ahead and vote. We'll give it a few seconds. All right, great. Getting a lot of responses here. This is awesome. Still coming in. This is good. All right, going to give it a couple more seconds here. So if you haven't answered yet, go ahead and answer. All right. So I'm going to actually share this with you guys. See here. So as you can see, the results, and thank you for this, is what I would have expected, is that 90% of you think that specifications are getting less clear up front and more likely to change throughout the project. So that's exactly what we're seeing as well. And this creates a challenge, but also an opportunity to differentiate when you're working on projects. And because of this specification situation, the burden that comes on your team to do a lot of design work can sometimes lead to a situation we like to call OIFO, or the oops, I forgot one scenario. So what does that mean? Well, sometimes when specifications are unclear or you're going very fast on a project, some things get missed. And that can often be costly at the end of the project. So how do you recover from this oops, I forgot one without handling or without ruining the estimation and really eating into all of the profit you designed onto the job? And if we take an example, so in this classroom, you know, the installation's been completed. You can see the wall control by the door on the left. There's a control up in the ceiling and a sensor there in the far left corner. But somewhere along the line, there was something written down that said there had to be a second control by the second door. As you can see, there's not one, so this is an OIFO, oops, I forgot one situation. So traditionally, you'd have to get out your cable, you have to cut a hole in the wall, connect that through Cat5 or high voltage up to the power pack with a sensor, add a switch, cut in a wall box, have a trim ring, put a faceplate on, and then afterwards clean up the mess that you made by all the cutting and dust and everything else that comes through. And you have to do that quickly because everyone's waiting on you because it should have been there from the beginning. But with Vive, it's much simpler to install and change. Like we talked about with that Pico wireless remote earlier, you can simply take that bare wall scenario, mount it right there, flush to that wall without any other parts and pieces, and then have it talk wirelessly to the control up in the ceiling. And you are good to go. So in that scenario, instead of all those extra parts and pieces, you simply attach it to the wall there, and the job's done. You made those changes, and the estimate is still on track. So it doesn't throw off your budget, and you can still make the profit on the job rather than saying, oh, really ate into the estimate there. Now we're going to be on a tight spot in terms of making this a good project. Another example that we actually ran into very recently was some miscommunication. So you often will run into this where different trades don't communicate, whether it's the general, the mechanical, or somebody, or sometimes the specifier and the owner, or the owner and the contractor. And in this case, something got missed where there was some thought that it needed to be a time clock, but in fact, the standard was written somewhere else that said it needed to be aux sensors everywhere. So rather than having to go back and solve it with this method, where you cut the hole in the ceiling and have to do all that work with routing wires and power packs, and again, get the vacuum out and clean it up and add a wall box so that you can connect those two. Instead, you can take the wireless sensor, simply add it to the ceiling. There's no wires on the back box, there's no power pack, it's battery powered. You simply tie it in and you're good to go. Again, wirelessly communicating to those load controllers already in the ceiling. So it's a very easy recovery method. So again, job's done, changes are made, and estimate is still on track. Very, very powerful solution. And just to give you an idea that, those pictures aren't hiding something or just some glossy marketing thing, we actually took a picture of the installation side by side here at our facility with clear ceiling tiles to let you show the impact of the wires. You can see the one on the left, more of a traditional wired sensor that has that power pack and the wires and the connections, and you can see it routing down the wall back to where the switch is, versus that wireless sensor with nothing around it. That's how easy it is to mount those sensors in those types of situations. We actually had another job that I worked with some people on a couple months back where there was a music hall, and they had installed some sensors, and as the musicians came into the space, they tried it out, and they said, well, I don't actually like the sound dampening equipment, so they moved that around. Well, it turns out that by moving that around, they blocked some of the sensors, and therefore people were very upset the lights were turning off on them. Luckily, they were wireless sensors, and we were able to very quickly come in and just move them to where they needed to be without having to rip up ceilings or put them out of their space any longer than they needed to be. So that was another example of the flexibility of those wireless sensors. And I have an engineering background, so I like to look at it in terms of graphs sometimes. So if you look at your typical type of job where you've got your costs in blue and your profits in orange, anytime you put an estimate together, there's some error rate. You're not quite sure how long it's going to take, and part of what you always strive for is getting that to be as tight as possible so that your error is as little as possible. But with a wired system, things can go wrong, and those, when they go wrong, they really add time to the project. You can eat into that profit that you've set out for yourself. But with a wireless system, not only are you able to get an opportunity for a higher profit like we talked about in the beginning, but the error bars, like we just showed with those examples, are much tighter. So you're much less likely to go way over your estimate because you can recover quickly from all those little oops, I forgot ones that happen along the way. So again, to kind of show them side by side, you can see the ones on the wired system are a much bigger error bar than the ones on the wireless system and where those end up. So that's very, very powerful in terms of your ability to be profitable on those jobs. So again, let's tie this back to how this actually helped you, the electrical contractor. To summarize, making adjustments on those changing conditions when jobs are going fast, either you did the design build or the spec was unclear, is you can make those changes without losing at profitability or without having to make your bid so high that you didn't get it to begin with. You can also make faster adjustments, even on changes where you can charge for them. So let's say it actually is a change order, it's an adjustment to the spec. You can make more money by charging for those and getting them done faster and your people back onto the next job. And then it also allows you to build an ongoing relationship with that customer by coming back to them and saying, hey, it'd be very easy to add some additional controls while I'm here, doing some maintenance or fixing out or punch list items, and lets you get some continual revenue from improvements without having to really take down their space over time. So something also that allows you to kind of build that relationship as an organization with your end customer. All right. Jumping into method 3, getting more jobs done. So we've got a chart here, and there's a lot of data on this chart, but the key factor, and this is from the Electrical Contractor magazine's Profile of the Electrical Contractor, some of the key data here we want to point out is that the average age of electrical contractors is 57.3. And you can see in the chart that that is a number that's been increasing over the last several years. So if you look at those blue bars, the bluest one, or the blue one there, is the newest year in 2016. In the 55 to 64 category, that number has been increasing every year. You can see that from the other columns. Versus the younger categories like 25 to 34, 35 to 44 has been decreasing every year. And that's creating some demand for that type of labor, especially at the lower rungs, to get jobs done in order to get things through and be efficient on the process. So it's sometimes squeezing the capacity of firms because they can't get enough people to come do the work. And the tool manufacturer's recent survey actually found that nearly 7 in 10 electricians are concerned about the skills gap in the U.S. labor market. So again, this is a big concern. We've been hearing a lot about this. So how do you grow your business with the team you have, given the fact that these trends are happening out there in terms of the labor market? And one is to take that faster installation, and that lets you leverage those same people to do more work. So if you're looking at a floor plan where you're doing wireless installation versus wired installation, even in the first hour, you can get more rooms done with the same team. It's even more pronounced after hour 2. And then at the end of the day, you get off the job faster while somebody doing a wired system would still be there working on additional spaces. So it's very, very efficient with your same team to use wireless and therefore be able to grow without being constrained by the fact that it's tough to get that good skilled labor onto your team. In addition, we've actually created the system with Vive and given the ability to electrical contractors to set it up without any factory technician at all. So this means that unlike many other systems out there, you don't have to wait for a manufacturer's technician to come out and program it, which can often hold up your workers from going to the next job or moving on to the next project. You have the capability to do it yourself and therefore control your own destiny and your own schedule. And while Lutron still has a full service option if you need the capacity and would like us to come out and program, we have a worldwide, world-class service organization. What we've seen is the simplicity of Vive has allowed over 75% of our Vive systems to be started up without field service. And this is an extremely empowering statistic for our electrical contractors because they're the ones being able to do this startup and get in and get off the job faster without tying up people waiting for a technician to come out and do the specialty programming. And again, this software is something that works on any smart device. So whether your guys have iPhones, Android phones, iPads, PCs, Surface tablets, it all works in a web browser on Safari or Chrome and allows you to tie those components together without a ladder. And in general, we didn't want this to have to be something where you need specialized training and you need to go through a whole course to understand how to program this. We designed it with simple in mind. So you can see if you're getting started and you just logged into the software, the screen on the left shows you, well, where do I need to start? Well, start here. Right? We've got an arrow pointing. We've grayed out the stuff you don't need and pointed you to exactly where you need to get started. And this type of help and instructions to walk you through the process is built throughout the software. Whether it's explaining what that thing on the wall does or how to set high-end trim and tuning and what that is, or giving you both visual and text instructions on what to do to add a device to the system. As you can see there on the far right with our Pico wireless remote. So this is something that's going to help your team and your guys on the ground efficiently go through and set up the system without having to worry about a factory technician coming out and doing some complex programming in order to do it. So again, tying this back to how this helps you, you can do more jobs faster without increasing your labor force. Something that's really, really important in today's environment. And it also gives you the control over your own destiny because you can set the schedule and complete it where you want. And if that schedule involves, I don't have the capacity and I want Lutron to come out and do the programming for me, we have a world-class service organization that can do that. But we also give you the power to do it yourself with a very simple, intuitive system to use. So if we take a look at those 3 methods and then say, okay, well, how has it actually worked in real life? Where are some applications and what have people been saying about it? Well, first of all, we wanted to look at that we've built this on a platform of wireless communication that's been over 20 years in the making. So we've been improving and improving, and our wireless communication is the most reliable communication wirelessly with a single protocol there. We've got over 3 million wireless systems out in the field, and that communication that we call Clear Connect has over 7 patents associated with it. And in terms of how the response has been in the market since we've launched this system last year has been extremely positive. You can see Joseph there said not only is it user-friendly to program, he thinks anyone can do it. And he figured it out without any training at all. And Ralph saw both the benefit of how easy it was and how much the wireless installation saved time. These are examples from around the country. Some other responses. Software is extremely self-explanatory, just like we saw with some of those screens there in the beginning, telling you kind of what the next steps are and what to do. I love this one. I think it's great, where he says anybody that can play a game on their phone can set up the Vive system. It's that easy. And David thought that the Vive system nailed the purpose of quick and seamless code compliance and scalability. So these are all things that contractors have seen and utilized when putting the system into commercial buildings. We also have a number of case studies available. So we've got our Franklin & Marshall installation. There's a link there. We'll also be sending this out with the webinar as we go. And again, this is one of those historical buildings where it's just not feasible to fish the wires through the wall, as Pat Henry said there, and wireless was able to make this project a reality, where a wired system would have just prevented you from using that. Not only that, but we have those wireless components that we talked about in the Empire State Building. And you can see Dana Schneider there from JLL saying that without the wireless, they would not have met their goals for the payback and the performance and the flexibility that they needed to get it into such an iconic building. So that wireless technology allows us to get anywhere from a small office to a college and university like Franklin & Marshall, or to the Empire State Building in terms of the types of applications those are in. All right, so that concludes the main portion of our webinar. I'm actually going to also send another poll out here, as well as open it up to questions. So if you have questions, type them into the questions box. I've got some coming in, and I'm also going to launch this poll for you guys to fill out. So a couple of great questions coming in about the wireless communication. So what wireless protocol do we use, and does it interfere with other wireless? So actually that ClearConnect wireless protocol that I talked about actually speaks at a different frequency band than most of the other wireless devices in the space. So for instance, your phone, Bluetooth headset, or other types of devices, even Zigbee or Z-Wave, all speak at 2.4 gigahertz. So that's a band that's unregulated, and the idea is that it's a crowded highway with a lot of people talking that can create interference. And many of you would have seen this if you've seen your Wi-Fi slow down with a lot of other people when they're there. ClearConnect actually works at the 434 megahertz band, which is regulated by the FCC, and means that you can only talk so often and so loud, and you have to follow a lot of extra rules, but the result is that it's an ultra-reliable communication band because there aren't other people on the highway blocking you. So that's a very good foundation for us to build that wireless on, and that's where a lot of our reliability comes from, in addition to all the years of experience and the patents we have associated with our actual communication protocol. Some other questions. Do the sensors and Picos talk directly to the load controllers, or do they have to go through the hub? So the answer to that is that they talk directly to the load controllers. So if you've got a Pico wireless remote or a wireless sensor talking to a PalPack as an example, they talk directly to those devices and do not need to go through the hub in order to make the system function. So if that hub were to go away, if it were unplugged or damaged in some way, all of your rooms would continue to operate and not have any issues other than losing things like the time clock and the centralized control and monitoring. Some other questions about ClearConnect devices and interference there. So it does speak at the same frequency as other ClearConnect devices in Lutron with RA2, but they don't really interfere with each other. Our devices are designed to interoperate in the same spaces as they go. And how is the hub powered? Great question. It actually ships with a power supply. So the hub itself is low voltage. It's a 24-volt power supply, or powered unit. And it ships with a power supply that takes in 120 through 277. So you can tap it into really any feed as you go through the building. You don't have to run a special wire or do special home runs or other wiring. You just tap it into a feed anywhere, and then it itself sits in the ceiling tile as a low voltage unit. Is the individual fixture control both daylighting and occupancy, or can you specify both or one? So the individual fixture control does do both occupancy and daylighting. We also have a version that does just wireless communication. So if you have a fixture that doesn't allow you to have a sensor pointing down into space, let's say it's a downlight or a flat panel or something like that, you can use our wireless sensors. And if you, for some reason, do not want it to daylight or not only want it to daylight, not occupancy, you can turn off either of those functionalities in the software through the Vive Hub. And a lot of questions coming in about positioning of this versus systems such as Caseta, Homeworks, or RA. And those things, Homeworks, Caseta, and RA are all more positioned as residential systems. So we optimize both the hardware and the functions in those for homes and residences. Vive is more optimized for commercial spaces like offices, K-12 schools, or higher education facilities. So that's kind of how we break those apart as we go. All right, so I know there's a lot of other questions coming through. I will be sending out some updates to those, and I can reach out to some of you individually if I've missed your questions. Also, as I close out of this, there'll be a survey if you want to be contacted more about stuff or just give us feedback on how the webinar went and if there are any other topics you'd like to learn about from us. We'd love to hear from you, so please look for that. And we'll also sending a follow-up email with both the case studies as well as the recording of this webinar as well. So thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it. And appreciate the time, and thank you all for your feedback. And let us know if there's anything else we can do to help you on your projects and share information with you. Have a great day. Thanks.